What's going on, everyone? Thank you all for joining me today. And thank you all for bearing with me and Andrew Wilson on what I kind of just consider a slog of a show yesterday. As I posted on X today, as I was kind of reflecting on it, and we'll get to that more here at the end, as I'm about to tell you, but I think that a lot of it had to do with kind of semantics and the defining of terms. And I think it was a slog, but I think it actually, if you think about it this way, I think it did bear fruit. I think it was valuable in that it was a tough discussion, and I would say it challenged me especially to be clear in my thinking and in my the vocabulary and the words that I use when talking about these things. And we'll get to more of that. I am going to bring in John Yep today. He is the president of Catholics for Catholics, as you all know. He's joined the show before, and they are under fire right now as they are fresh off being accused by Kash Patel's girlfriend of being a foreign-backed operation working to split the Republican Party to lose the midterms. So that should be an interesting conversation. We're also going to get into the backlash on Carrie Pjan Bowler. So that should be an interesting conversation. I'm then going to finish today's show addressing a lot of the super chat comments that I received during the Andrew Wilson show. I wasn't able to get to those. I had to leave. I had some family stuff I had to get to. So we will get through those super chats. I appreciate you all leaving them. So I'm not just going to leave those hanging out to dry. We're going to go through them. And then we'll go through any other super chats that you all have for me here today. So we are going to go a little longer so that we can get to all of this and cover all of that. But I want to start today with Joe Kent's interview with the Daily Caller, where he revealed that the FBI and Kash Patel specifically was the one who blocked the investigation into the leads showing potential foreign involvement in the Charlie Kirk assassination case. This kind of ties in with my, I guess you can say, frustrations with my conversation with Andrew Wilson yesterday. He also responded to claims Joe Kent did made by Turning Point USA, more specifically, the Charlie Kirk show, more specifically, Andrew Colvett and Blake Neff, who accused him of betraying Charlie Kirk over potentially testifying in the Tyler Robinson case. Kent is being accused of leaking the now famous text message thread of Charlie saying that because of the stereotypical behavior of Jewish donors, he had no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. A member who was present in that group chat was Josh Hammer, who, if you've been paying attention to all this, you all know. He was leading the charge against Charlie Kirk to remove Tucker Carlson from Turning Point USA events. He has referred to Tucker as the most dangerous anti-Semite in America. And he has now done the same thing with Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, and basically anybody who's a non-Zionist. And as you're about to see, Joe Kent and Tulsi Gabbard, who he is levying serious claims against, essentially smearing Tulsi Gabbard for being an anti-Semite and running an operation within the government according to his sources, whom he cannot name. And this comes on the heels of Tulsi Gabbard discovering some pretty shocking evidence that she just put out. And that's the word of the day. The word of the day that's been stuck in my head for the past 24 hours. Evidence, evidence, evidence. Show me the evidence. And I'm sorry to say this to you guys, but we're going to start with Josh Hammer. So you've got to listen to his voice. And I know that's tough, but we can and we will do hard things here on the Zach Costello Show. All right, let's get into it. I'm Zach Costello.
The screenshots apparently got to this individual, and they got to Candace Owens there. Now, around the same time, Aaron, I can't name sources, obviously, but I was told by multiple people around the same time, last fall, I don't remember the exact date, that Tulsi Gabbard, who is the director of national intelligence, and she was Joe Kent's boss as the director of the National Counterterrorism Center. He worked under Tulsi Gabbard. I was told by numerous people who are very much part of the conservative ecosystem in D.C., these are well-sourced people, strong connections to the White House. They told me to be strongly on the lookout for Tulsi Gabbard and her office. They basically said that Tulsi Gabbard is running something of a shadow operation from her office, that she is personally, I was told this, I've met Tulsi, I don't know her well. I was told she's personally actually very anti-Semitic, and that she is heavily involved in a lot of the anti-Semitic influencer operations, and that she is potentially involved when it comes to trying to feed some of these narratives there. Now, I didn't put two and two together at the time and think that this trail led immediately to Joe Kent. I've known of Joe Kent for years. We follow each other on Twitter for forever. I knew that he had some isolationist-y leaning views on foreign policy, but nothing particularly extreme. He actually, up until yesterday or a year ago, whatever, was somewhat sober, at least, on issues pertaining to the Middle East, Iran, Israel, you name it, though. So I didn't put two and two together at the time that it immediately went to Joe Kent, but especially after his disgusting anti-Semitic, dripping with the anti-Semitism conspiracy-laden resignation letter, Aaron, I am not surprised that here is where we are at when it comes to trying to figure out who it was. And indeed, it does seem, as Andrew on his show said, that it was Joe Kent.
My goodness. What a liar. What a liar that this guy is. Andrew Colvett said on his show that Joe Kent is one of the few people, multiple people that he gave the group message to. He literally said that he gave it to a few people. And Andrew Colvett was on an unhinged blabbermouth tour in the days and weeks after Charlie Kirk's assassination. But also, Joe Kent and his anti-Semitism-laden resignation letter, wherein he said that Israel is the reason that we got dragged into the war with Iran. My goodness, you guys, our own Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, told us that this is what happened. Lindsey Graham, a U.S. senator, told us that he coached up Bibi Netanyahu on how to influence Trump to attack Iran. Even worse, and you know what? This is my opinion. I just thought of this as I was preparing for today's show. I bet it was more than coach. You know what I'm putting together there with regard to Lindsey Graham? Telling Bibi Netanyahu on how specifically to invade and attack Iran to force our hand, as Marco Rubio described. I think it was more than just a coaching up on how to influence President Trump. I think it was a coaching up on how to get President Trump to move his hand. But you see the twisting of the definition of anti-Semitism there. And you know what? Tulsi Gabbard, I was disappointedly starting to question last week. As you all know who saw me here, we covered her testimony when she had to testify before Congress as to whether or not Iran was an imminent threat. She didn't give us great answers. She kind of just stuck to the Trump MAGA party line. But now that Josh Hammer hates her, she's a little bit more back on my good side. But I want you guys to take a look at this. Tulsi learned that U.S. intelligence intercepted Ukraine government plans to route hundreds of millions of American taxpayer dollars to boost Biden's 2024 campaign against Donald Trump and the DNC. Gabbard is now asking the U.S. Agency for International Development to determine if the plot was carried out. The U.S. tax dollars were earmarked for Ukraine to use for clean energy. Gabbard's team even found that the communications intercepted under Biden were not thoroughly investigated. And then this guy, who is Eric Doherty, who's a MAGA and a Trump mouthpiece, said, imagine that. Investigate and expose it all. Director of National Intelligence, Gabbard. You know what I wonder? Because Tulsi Gabbard and the U.S. intelligence apparatus, they discovered this tip, this lead. I wonder if the investigative authorities, in this case, the U.S. Agency for International Development, or an organization like the FBI, for example, are willing to accept the evidence being provided by the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Are they going to decide to investigate it or not? You know what's funny? Tulsi Gabbard found evidence that Barack Obama initiated Russiagate with fabricated evidence that he colluded, conspired with the CIA in order to do so and to turn around on Trump. It hindered the first couple years of his administration as he had to go through the whole Russiagate scandal. Did she turn that over to the FBI? What did they do with it? What came of it? We haven't seen any arrests as far as that goes with regard to Russiagate. Any consequences? Joe Kent says they found evidence of foreign involvement, leads or tips that point to potential foreign involvement in the Charlie Kirk case. And what did the FBI do with that? Well, you're about to find out. Any evidence of crimes in the Epstein files given to the FBI. Seriously, what does the FBI do with evidence of crimes submitted to them by the intelligence apparatus? This is a very important question that we must have answered, because this is a very relevant topic as it relates to all of this evidence that we are talking about regarding all of these issues, particularly the Charlie Kirk investigation. And this leads us now to what Joe Kent revealed here about Kash Patel shutting down the evidence or tips or leads that were provided to them by the National Counterterrorism Center, of which Joe Kent was the director. And this really pissed off. This really pissed off the FBI, as you're about to see.
I'm going to move on to the Charlie Kirk investigation. You have said that you wanted to investigate a potential foreign nexus involved in the assassination attempt. I'd like for you to perhaps expand on what you meant by that. Do you believe that Tyler Robinson was the shooter, but perhaps that he didn't act alone? Or do you think that someone else entirely was responsible for Charlie Kirk's death?
I'm not questioning the case against Tyler Robinson. I mean, that's going to play out in court. There's DNA on the weapon, et cetera. That because Tyler was an American, that wasn't really part of what we were looking at. My broader point is that we knew once Charlie was assassinated that there was people who had prior knowledge. There was folks in the crowd, the guy who jumped up and claimed immediate credit for killing Charlie Kirk in some sort of a diversion. It does appear that there are more leads that we need to run down to include the foreign nexus. There was quite a few. There was a lot of international attention, I'll just say, on Charlie Kirk himself, because he was an international figure. He was a national figure. And I know that NCTC was not allowed to fully complete a lot of this investigation. I understand the DOJ and the FBI will say, well, we did complete it. So I understand what they're going to say, but in my view, that work just simply wasn't done.
And you said that you were stopped from investigating this. Who specifically stopped you?
We were. The FBI restricted our ability to investigate.
And did that come specifically from Director Patel?
It did. Yeah, it was part of a discussion that he and I had back and forth, and then ultimately that was the decision that was.
All right, so there you go. That's Joe Kent right there, confirming that it was Kash Patel who ultimately made the decision to shut down the investigation into the potential foreign nexus regarding the Charlie Kirk investigation. And this leads us to an interesting spot, because the FBI claims that there's nothing to look into regarding this. They shut down the leads and the tips, saying that they were irrelevant, something that we shouldn't look into. While the intelligence apparatus and NCTC and Joe Kent believes that to be unacceptable. So what we have here is a disagreement between the intelligence apparatus and the investigative authorities. The director of public affairs at the FBI, his name is Ben Williamson. Let me pull this up for you guys here. He issued this statement on X regarding Joe Kent. He said a number of people have asked for a response to this, so here it is. Joe Kent is being a dishonest hack. He worked for the NCTC, which is not a law enforcement or investigative agency. He had zero role or 1811 investigative authority in this. This is like me saying I was blocked from playing receiver for the Commanders. It's an issue of having no business or frankly ability to do something, not an issue of access. Furthermore, the FBI actually made an early exception and allowed NCTC to access the intelligence reports, and international terrorism returned zero connections, none. Joe Kent kept making things up anyway. The shameless media tour he's been on reeks of being desperate for attention and the baseless conspiracies he's spreading through the admin, particularly about Charlie's murder, could very well make it more difficult to get justice for our friend. If he had any shame, Joe Kent should be ashamed of himself. All right, so given that statement, I want to show you guys here what the actual role of NCTC is, because that was pretty untruthful with regard to Ben Williamson's statement. The NCTC serves as the primary U.S. government organization for integrating and analyze all intelligence related to terrorism and counterterrorism. Operating under the Director of National Intelligence, who is Tulsi Gabbard, it functions as the central hub for the whole of government effort to protect the United States and its interest from terrorist threats. Its core responsibilities: the NCTC's role is defined by several key mission areas. Threat analysis. It acts as the primary organization for analyzing all source intelligence, both foreign and domestic, pertaining to international terrorism. Information sharing. The center assures that partner agencies such as the FBI, CIA, and DHS have access to the intelligence needed to execute their missions. This includes maintaining NCTC Current, a secure website for disseminating terrorism info to its mission partners. All right. So what that means is that what Joe Kent was doing and what NCTC were doing, they are the ones who are responsible for integrating and analyzing all of this intelligence as it relates to terrorism and counterterrorism, whether foreign or domestic. So them looking into the Charlie Kirk assassination and investigation and its potential foreign connections is certainly a part of their scope of work, I guess you can say. But in any case, we're at a fundamental disagreement. Joe Kent believes, he disagrees with what Ben Williamson is saying in that the leads were pursued to their end. The FBI obviously believes that to be the case. Joe Kent, who was, again, not just somebody, he was the director of the National Counterterrorism Center. And you can see all of the things that they do right there. Very important. It's a high-level individual who's coming out and saying these things. So we can either say that Joe Kent is a liar and we shouldn't believe what he has to say, or he's not a liar and he's bringing up very, you would say, concerning information regarding the Charlie Kirk case and not all leads being pursued. But the Charlie Kirk Show, Blake Neff, Andrew Colvett, still believe that Joe Kent is betraying Charlie Kirk by saying that we're not pursuing all the leads. And here Joe Kent responds. Take a listen.
You also said that you would testify if you were called to trial. In what capacity do you think you would be called? And what is your reaction to friends of Charlie like Blake Neff and Andrew Colvett describing that as a betrayal?
So what the FBI will say when they want, essentially when they would tell us that we couldn't continue to look into the case, they would say, hey, you can't look into the case anymore because if you do, you could be called by the defense. And to me, I just said, okay, if the defense wants to call me, I'm okay with that. I'm not volunteering. I'm not defending. I'm not, a supporting witness or anything. But I'm saying in order to complete the investigation, I'm not going to stop because there's a threat that says like, oh, you're going to have to be called. You could be called to the stand by the defense. So to me, that never seemed like a solid reason for not continuing the investigation. I wanted to get to the truth. I wanted to continue the investigation. The FBI can say, no, we don't think you should, and they did indeed stop us. That was essentially their prerogative. I felt that there was more work to be done. Whenever I was, essentially warned that, hey, if you continue to investigate, you could be called by the defense. My answer then and my answer now is always like, well, so be it. I just want to get to the truth. Again, I'm not defending Tyler Robinson. I'm not offering by any means my expertise or my services to the defense. I just understand that in order to get a complete and total investigation of what happened with Charlie, that there is a potential I could have been called by the defense. And again, if that happens, so be it. Not something I'm volunteering for. I understand emotions are running high. I completely understand that. But to say it's a betrayal, people can say, again, they can say what they want to say. I just want to get to the truth of what happened to Charlie Kirk.
Yeah. So if the truth requires that the defense team for Tyler Robinson to bring Joe Kent in to testify, I don't understand how that would be a problem. I mean, if we're truly seeking justice and the full truth regarding what happened to Charlie Kirk, why in the world would bringing someone in who could potentially put the pressure on Tyler Robinson to explain who he was working with, who influenced him, was anybody else involved? If the former director of the National Counterterrorism Center came in and was basically saying that, then, and Tyler Robinson was forced to answer those questions, or the defense team was forced to answer those questions, or it was just brought out into public, how in the heck would that be something that would be bad or a betrayal of Charlie Kirk? It doesn't make any sense. The guys on the Charlie Kirk show, Andrew Colvett and Blake Neff, also came out and falsely claimed that Joe Kent said that he would volunteer to be on Tyler Robinson's defense team. That's just not true. You heard what he just said right there. What he just said was, if I am called in to testify at any point in this trial, because I am saying that not all leads were pursued, then he would literally just go in and tell the truth. It's really not that complicated. And that's just what all this comes down to. Guys, all of this stuff is it's not that complicated. As we'll get into, we're about to bring in John Yep here. John's here. He's waiting for us. But as we'll get into, with regard to the Andrew Wilson back and forth and conversation or debate, whatever you want to call it, we got so held up on the semantics and the technical definitions of these certain things where we just lost sight of what I believe just to be the big common sense picture here, that there are irregularities that occurred, leads, tips that seem to not be acknowledged or are being pursued. They are refusing to investigate a lot of these irregularities, and that is suspicious. That causes concern for many of us who do not believe that the government is going to be truthful with us. And that's not just based on, things that we're making up. It's based on the fact that we have been lied to time and time again about our government, whether it be COVID, whether it be mask mandates or the COVID vaccine or election interference or the Butler potential assassination of President Trump or the Charlie Kirk investigation. Like, there is a long history of our government not being truthful and covering things up in the name of things being classified, because that's the word that they use to hide things from us. And as far as the Charlie Kirk investigation goes, a lot of us, whether we knew Charlie or not, took it very personally because a lot of our values aligned with Charlie. We believe that he was killed for kind of true American Christian values. A lot of us believe that he was shifting his views toward a more orthodox. John Yep was on my show previously talking about how he was taking the Catholic faith, or what you would call a more orthodox or conservative Christian faith, a non-Zionist Christian faith, more seriously. So these are all questions that we certainly have answers to, and we're certainly allowed to ask them. And we're certainly allowed to ask them without being called conspiracy theorists or anti-Semites or being diagnosed with whatever mental illness that they want to come up with. They use all these words, all these phenomenons, all these effects, all these diagnoses that I can't even pronounce, to label us in some certain way, to shut us up and to silence us. And you know what? Thank God for those who continue to ask questions and for those who continue to recognize patterns and call things out, who are not political shills, who are just seeking the truth and who answer to God, because it is because of people like that and people like us who are doing that, that are the reason that these past conspiracies are now no longer conspiracies. They're actually just facts. But it's because of those people that came out and put our reputations on the lines by refusing the vaccine or speaking out against it with regard to COVID, who lost their medical licenses, for example. It's because of those people, those brave souls that came forward, that we now can look back and say, this was false. These people were unfairly treated. These were not conspiracies. These were actual real facts and concerns that people had that were justified. Okay. All right. Enough of me talking here. Let's now bring in John Yep. Let's add him in here. Let's remove what we've got here. We're going to bring in John. John, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
John, how are you? It's good to see you. It's good to see you again. We got to connect in person at your Catholics for Catholics event, which was awesome. It was a smashing success. It was a success both in person and that it was an awesome event. And obviously, I think you made the right people angry about it. So I am happy that took place. But welcome to the show today, and thanks for joining me.
Operation Failure. I suppose my main task of the day was to ensure that Zach and Candace were able to meet and talk in person. That did not happen, ladies and gentlemen. And Zach let me know after the fact. So, no, I'm just teasing. Yeah, I honestly wish y'all could have had a chance to catch up. I mean, yeah, it's Candace, you, Barron, so many other people. It's been a team to get to the bottom of the investigation of Charlie Kirk, and just having you guys all in the room in a spirit of prayer, because it's a spiritual battle first and foremost, was pretty surreal. And yeah, it was a success. It was a success not just from the team that put on, but it was truly a collective effort from thousands and what ended up being millions of people who viewed the event. Catholic Prayer for America. It's our signatory event. We do it every single year. This year we did it in the heart of DC. Well, it was a week ago today, actually, March 19th. And, Zach, I'm so grateful for the support you gave us, just because to get that across the finish line, it took a lot. I think I told you at least privately or off air, just on some of the backdrop, what was going on, and we had our speakers were getting serious pressure from different sides to back away, to pull out from this event. So it came off.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I did not have any expectation of you to connect me with Candace. You put together the whole event. I know you're a busy man, so I absolutely did not have that expectation. And like I said, it was more of a hope and a goal, and I'm sure it will happen eventually. So I appreciate you acknowledging that, but I certainly don't want you to think that I felt like I was entitled to meet Candace.
Okay, man, we'll just organize another one next year.
There you go. We'll figure it out. And maybe we can, I jokingly said to a couple of my friends, maybe we'll invade Mar-a-Lago next year, right? Because isn't that where you guys have?
Yeah, that's right. We've done it the first 2 years. We did it in Mar-a-Lago, and this year was in DC. So we're to be determined where we're going to have it. But this is set. It's always on March 19th, so you can mark your calendars and try to be there. As thanks be to God, we sold out tickets. And funny enough, the dumbest, when they're trying to pull apart like something from the event that was bad, the rumor went around, there was only 75 tickets or 75 people in the room. Candace couldn't even draw a crowd. I don't know where they get this stuff. Is insane. It was over 400 sold out, and it was viewed by millions. So
it's crazy. You're sitting in the room, you see all the tables, you see the crowd. Everybody was obviously, we couldn't wait for Candace to get up there. We couldn't wait for, all of the speakers were phenomenal. The Carrie Pjan Bowler speech was inspiring. It was awesome. Joe Kent's discussion with you, I personally, just because it's an issue that I care a lot about right now, I thought that was a highlight of one of the highlights of the event. But, obviously everybody wanted to hear what Candace Owens had to say. And the room was packed and people were locked into what she had to say. And being there in reality, and then seeing what these people are saying online, you just see just the crap that spreads online. And it's just like, okay, I know what reality is. I know what the actual truth is here. And then to see people like have posts go viral because they say, oh, there was only 75 people there. Look at all the empty seats. Everybody's eating. Nobody's listening to Candace. It's like the speaker started talking during the dinner portion of it and the room was packed. So what are you talking about?
It truly is absurd. And just the miracles that were happening, because this is about prayer, right? Asking God's help upon the country, because we need it now more than ever. And, Matt Walsh, he, as I communicated, his team made the decision about 48 hours before the event that he was unable to participate. They had a previous commitment that came up. That's how they phrased it. And,
Isn't that funny? That's funny how they phrased it. A previous commitment that
it's a previous commitment that came up. I mean, I didn't want to read into it. I was just like, okay, it is what it is. And we just, we played he sent a video, we played part of the video. That was truly a bummer. Honestly, wish we could have heard earlier that was the case, that they were not going to make it, but whatever. It is what it is. That being said, because this is one of the things, and I think it's like chapter 3 of the FBI girlfriend's post, which we'll get into, I know, a little bit. They were like surprised that as soon as Joe Kent resigns, Catholic for Catholics pops up and we invite him, like this was some sort of a plan to do this. It was not, right? There was nothing going on. It literally was. We got that email from Matt that morning, Tuesday morning, March 17th, and he couldn't make it. And then, so we were like, okay, a little bit bummed out. And then boom, he resigns, and we had some friends that knew Joe, and we made the invite, we made a discernment, like, okay, this is it. This is a man who, apart from the political realities, okay, he is making a serious, because he said it like that, I'm following my conscience, right? And we saw that, and specifically the war with Iran, like I can't in conscience do this, right? And I'm a Catholic, you're a Catholic. We happen to have our own Pope, okay? The Vicar of Christ has been like actually very, very vocal on this war, even saying things like those who are involved in this war need to make a serious act of reflection on their conscience and potentially go to confessions, right? So Pope says this, Joe Kent makes this, we're like, Joe is the man, right? So one door slams shut from the Daily Wire, and another door comes flying open, and we brought Joe there to speak, and he gave a fantastic talk.
Yeah, he did. And your thinking is right along the lines there. I mean, what Joe Kent did was courageous, and he knew, I think, the heat that he was going to receive for doing so. It's when you see someone who steps down from a position of power because his conscience doesn't agree with what's going on, that is extremely admirable. And again, you may not agree with him, and that's fine, but the backlash to call him like weak and a coward, like imagine, someone who's a media head, which has happened time and time again, call someone who has 11 combat tours, who's a Green Beret, 6 gold stars, who lost his wife in the war on terror, who resigns from a post because he doesn't agree with what's going on. He even said in your talk with him, he's like, look, I'm not like some pacifist who doesn't think America should never get involved in any war or any conflict. But he said that if an attack was actually imminent, or if America was actually in danger, then that is when we would respond. And his whole resignation letter was about how Iran was not an imminent threat. And this is a high-ranking government intelligence official who saw all the intelligence and made a decision that he obviously disagrees that there was an imminent threat from Iran. And he made the decision to step down based on his experience, knowing that the president of the United States was going to be unhappy with him, knowing that the majority of mainstream media was going to attack him and call him an anti-Semite, because that's literally what he's being called now because of his resignation letter. He knew that he knew that all of that was going to happen, and he did it anyway. And that, to me, when somebody resigns their position of power and steps away and doesn't take the money, turns away from the power to do what's right, that to me is a sign that that individual can be trusted. And I feel like, as you said in your talk with him, his position aligns with what the Pope has been very outspoken about with regard to this war in Iran.
Absolutely. And that's the whole point. We want to bring when we're talking about prayer, okay, it's got to be prayer that cannot be divorced from action, right? So the people that we had on stage are people that actually live out their prayer, okay, in the sphere that they're in. Carrie Pjan, right, kicked off the Religious Liberty Commission for her religious liberty beliefs, right? The amount of backlash we had just to have her there on stage and to give her an award from the likes of Mark Levin and others. Obviously Candace, you had Eduardo Verastegui, right? He's done so much to in the fight for to end human trafficking, General Michael Flynn and others. So that was the idea. That's why Joe was there. And looking forward to next year to bring to the front, to put our heroes right there in the midst of us to continue to lead us so that we can support them.
Yeah, well, I know we talked about potentially, I know you guys have done it at Mar-a-Lago in the past. I don't know if that's going to be an option for you guys, since apparently, your organization is a foreign-backed op that is now designed to dismantle and divide the Republican Party so that we lose the midterms. So
did you just read that somewhere online, a random post? That wouldn't be by chance from, I don't know, the FBI director's girlfriend? Is that the case?
Kash Patel's girlfriend, I guess, apparently spent the last 22 months trying to figure out why people are critical of the Trump administration. And the conspiracy that she came up with was that it's a foreign-linked coordinated operation. And she named Catholics for Catholics by name in one of those chapters in your affiliation with Michael Flynn, with General Michael Flynn.
Those chapters. So 13-part thread, 4 chapters is like I don't know, it's like the Summa Theologica, Prima Secunda, first part of the second part. And so you have these different elements of this, right? And again, it's supposed to be about 8 million times, okay? And it was the end of a long work day. We're in work post-event wrap up, and I'm driving home, and all of a sudden, one of the people sent me a message to say, hey, by the way, you've been mentioned. Like, what? So we pull this out. I'm trying to, make dinner on the side. Got the phone on the other, trying to tell you about the response for this from our media team and trying to analyze what is this? Like, what is going on here? And, my first thought was like, as the different pieces are coming together. So Tucker's named, Candace is named, General Michael Flynn is named, and Joe Kent. The common denominator that she pulls it all together in, I think it was on chapter 3 or 4, right? Is that there was this event led by Catholics for Catholics, and all of these people who've been critical of the Trump administration in different parts were all the same day. Therefore, they must be part of this whole thing to bring down the Trump administration. Okay. Now, we joke about it in some ways about this, but when you start to pull together, like, there are a couple two common denominators with this post. Number one is it's the challenging, precisely what you guys talk about ad nauseum here on the show, is the undue influence of Israel on this country, right? So it's literally chapter 3 was about the challenging the Charlie Kirk case, like who killed Charlie Kirk, right? And she's trying to make the point, like, everyone jumped on this, said Israel did it, and blah, 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 right? And then chapter 4 was Joe Kent's resignation because Israel pushed us into the war, essentially. So that's one common denominator, is you guys are critical of Israel's undue influence on the United States. Well, yeah, as a Catholic from a theological point of view, absolutely are, because it doesn't jive with our beliefs, right? Zionism has no place within our Catholic teaching, and it has a tremendous, horrible geopolitical consequence if you ascribe too much religiosity to this spiritual devotion to the 1948 state of Israel. The bloody war happening right now in Iran, in southern Lebanon, by the way, very Christian country, is being fought philosophically, theologically, right here in the battlefields, in the internet spheres of the United States. This makes that war possible. The second thread, and I'll be quiet for this, that I'm picking up here, is the common denominator is really, it's Christ. It's our Catholic faith, because that, at the end of the day, is what brought all those speakers together. Okay. That was the reason we did. We came together in the name of Jesus. Okay. And if you're going to attack us for that, for picking out those stances, then so be it. You attack Christ, you attacked us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such a great point. And that's a point that I've been making again and again. And the the Zionist influence and the reason that it's so powerful, and Zionism is, again, we've talked about this, the specific belief that the current state of Israel is the biblical Israel and that they have a divine promise right to that land that they are in. If our government, if we have individuals in our government that ascribe to that religious belief, which many of them do, we have the majority of our government who either believes that in a religious belief, that they believe that they will be cursed, in fact, if they do not support this nation state, or they are just simply bought and paid for by this nation state. In that, over 90%, it's literally over 90% of our nation's politicians, U.S. congresspeople, receive money from the pro-Israel lobby. So we are in a place where we cannot and do not make prudent decisions with regard to U.S. foreign policy regarding the state of Israel, because we do not treat it like it's any other country or any other one of our allies. We don't review or interpret our relationship with them from an objective standpoint. It's done so from an either religious standpoint or a bought and paid for standpoint. And this is specifically the problem. And the consequences are very real. As you just described, this just got us into a war. So now American soldiers, innocent people, as we've seen, are losing their life because of this. It's serious. The consequences of these decisions, the consequences of this ideology are real life. This is not just made up stuff that we're just talking about here to have, for views or, to garner up some attention here on social media. Like, these have real consequences. Bad leadership, bad decisions have real consequences.
It does. I mean, you go back to the importance of the free press during the Revolutionary War, right? The committees of correspondence, how they were set up prior to the revolution to basically get the word out what was going on, right? They started that. And obviously, in Thomas Paine's famous pamphlet, right, about why we fight, right, which Washington read to the troops, right? That was so key. In a similar way, 250 years later, you think about what all independent media is doing right now. Because if it wasn't for our voices right now on the different platforms speaking up about this, because this war has serious potential consequences for the United States. We didn't want to be there. Okay. There's a reason besides the gas is $5, here in Arizona right now, which is crazy high. It affects us on every single day, but it could have much worse, longer term consequences. So we have got to be speaking up about this in the battles right here on these podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that obviously a guy who is now thrust himself right into the center of it is Joe Kent. So, that was obviously a big portion of what you guys spoke about at the event, and that was really good stuff. But so let's, I want to ask you something here about this claim that Kash Patel, whose name is Alexis Wilkins, Kash Patel's girlfriend, Alexis Wilkins, is actually making about you guys. Because in this chapter, what she says here, and I just want you to comment on this. She says that the network, which is the foreign linked network that is out here working to divide MAGA and the Republican Party so that we lose midterms, and it's it is an attack on President Trump. Excuse me. She said, Catholics for Catholics list General Michael Flynn as the current senior advisor on their own website. So Flynn is the anchor of a digital infrastructure that has been repeatedly activated at every major Republican fracture point over the 22 months. So comment on that a little bit, John. What exactly is Catholics for Catholics relationship with General Michael Flynn?
I mean, that's not exactly like an earth-shattering piece of evidence that was discovered. I mean, it's been on our website since the very beginning. General Michael Flynn, I met him for the first time like about 3 years ago, right before we started our organization, and I invited to come to our first event. And since then, I've had a close relationship with him, and I'm grateful for it. I've been inspired by what his family has got. By the way, he's not the only senior advisor, so we have others on there. It's not the only one, right? And what his family has been through. If you don't know the Flynn story, go on Amazon, watch the film, Flynn, The Untold Story, something like that. And breaking news just yesterday, actually, the DOJ just finally settled after like 10 years, the lawsuit, remember when Flynn was removed early on in Trump presidency 1 unjustly, and he was accused. And anyway, they just settled with him. So they're paying him $1.2 million. So the entire Flynn family, after taking him through the gauntlet, right? So he's been a national hero. He, even in spite of, he was kind of thrown under the bus early on by President Trump, but he stuck with it. He's been not about himself. He's just an attitude about him, his wife, married 40 years, fellow Catholics, and they're true patriots. So when I'm talking about senior advisor, someone I want who knows DC, who's been through it, who's been destroyed, but it still loves America, loves his faith, better believe it, I'll call you a senior advisor, right? Yeah. So that's it. That's the relationship right there. But it's right there on the website for all to see.
Yeah, good stuff. And as is obvious, given everything that he's been through, it makes total sense as to why he would be a senior advisor to your guys' organization, and he's a good one at that. Let's jump in here into, because this was another reason that we wanted to get together today and talk, because of the Carrie Pjan Bowler.
Can I make one last comment about the Kash thing?
Sure.
Even we joke about this, that it's the girlfriend of the FBI director, and it's laughable in some ways, right? I mean, it's laughable that we've, you see Kash Patel celebrating with the hockey after they won the championship the gold medal, right, in that locker room, and it's okay, like, what's going on there? But in another sense, it's not laughable. It is serious, because I guarantee you that was signed off probably by members within the FBI. Now, am I crazy to think that's a subtle warning to us who are engaged in this fight for America? No, because it's only 3 years ago that our own FBI was investigating pro-lifers, Catholics in Virginia, and other stuff like this. So it's serious. So that's we laugh, but take it for what it's worth. Just want to put that out there.
I'm glad you did, because that actually is one of the comments that I had on that post, and that I believe that Alexis Wilkins is promoting an anti-Catholic conspiracy theory, and she's obviously connected to the FBI. Her boyfriend is the director of the FBI, and we know that they get together often. We know that he takes the FBI jet to fly to her country music concerts and support her hobbies and all of this good stuff. But for her to be putting that out there is a big deal. For her to be spreading an anti-Catholic conspiracy theory is a very big deal, because of what Catholics were put through by the previous administration's FBI. They labeled us extremists, and they were monitoring Catholics who attend the traditional Latin Mass because they were considered extremists. And who labeled them extremists? Well, we know that the ADL was working in coordination with the FBI to label Catholics extremists. So what's also interesting about that is, after Charlie Kirk was killed, the FBI, according to Kash Patel, distanced itself from the ADL, because the ADL had labeled Turning Point USA an extremist organization in the last months of Charlie Kirk's life. So Kash Patel says, well, we're going to end our relationship, the FBI will, with the ADL. It's looking like to me that the FBI could still be working with the ADL with regard to their view and their perspective on how they view Catholics, given what Alexis Wilkins just put out in her post. But that's just my opinion.
Time will tell. We'll see how that plays out.
We'll see how it plays out. Okay. Carrie Pjan Bowler was also one of the other individuals who was at the event. She gave a very inspiring speech about staying strong and staying strong in the face of persecution for her faith, which she certainly has experienced here over the months since she was removed from the Religious Liberties Commission by President Trump, Dan Patrick, the leaders on that commission. She has been vouching for the bishops and the church leaders, the Catholic church leaders specifically on that commission, who by name would be Cardinal Dolan and Bishop Robert Barron, to speak out in her defense. Bishop Barron finally broke his silence about Carrie Pjan Bowler, and I'm going to read his statement here, and then we'll go from there. I'll get your commentary on it. So Bishop Barron responded and said, over the past several weeks, Carrie Pjan Bowler has complained that she was removed from the Presidential Religious Liberties Commission because of her Catholic beliefs. She has called out myself and other Catholic members on the commission for not defending her. This is absurd. Mrs. Pjan Bowler was not dismissed for her religious convictions, but rather for her behavior at a gathering of the commission last month, browbeating witnesses, aggressively asserting her point of view, hijacking the meeting for her own political purposes. The Catholic position on matters of Zionism, to which I fully subscribe, is as follows. All forms of anti-Semitism are to be unequivocally condemned. The state of Israel has a right to exist, but the modern nation state of Israel does not represent the fulfillment of biblical prophecies and hence does not stand beyond criticism. If Mrs. Pjan Bowler were dismissed for holding these beliefs, it is difficult to understand why I am still a member of the commission. To paint herself as a victim of anti-Catholic prejudice or to claim that her religious liberty has been denied is simply preposterous, according to Bishop Barron. So what I will say is that I am glad that Bishop Barron came out and laid out the true Orthodox Christian teaching on Zionism. He did that clearly, which is very good to see. However, I don't agree in his assessment of how Carrie Pjan Bowler was treated. I don't think it's fair. I think that her exchange with Seth Dillon and the Jewish rabbi, those were the main conversations and conflicts that she had during that day. She was not emotional. She never lost her cool. She asked tough questions, but I certainly wouldn't categorize what she did as browbeating or trying to assert her own point of view. She simply just asked, if as a Catholic and I do not embrace Zionism, does that make me anti-Semitic? And the rabbi answered her question to that and said yes. So I think her being outspoken against Zionism as a Catholic was admirable. And our church leaders have failed to do so. And I think that what Robert Barron said here about Carrie Pjan Bowler is unfair. I don't think that it's accurate. I don't think it's an accurate representation of what happened to her.
It's not fair, and it's very disappointing. Obviously, giving great acknowledgement to, and I know I think you came to your faith through watching Bishop Barron, or helped you along, and he's done so much with Word on Fire. And I don't want to throw that under the baby out of the bathwater by any means. Yeah. That being said, extremely disappointing. Okay, because here's the backdrop. There are 5 bishops on the panel. 2 are actually sit on it, and then 3 are advisory to it. And you mentioned Dolan and Barron are actually on the panel. Carrie reached out to all 5 of those right away. So did we. Asked them to support Carrie privately behind the scenes before we went public and ballistic, right? Because people are saying, come on, Carrie, you're a recent convert, stay in your place. Don't call these bishops out. Talk to them privately. She did. They never respond, specifically Bishop Barron. This is February 9th. She's canned from the commission. In the weeks that followed, she's texting on their private cell phones. Okay, 0 answer. It was not until Carrie finally texted Bishop Barron around 11 o'clock the night before she went on a Tucker Carlson interview saying, "Hey, by the way, I'm going to Tucker tomorrow, and he's going to ask me about this. Will you make a public statement?" That's when he first actually responded. Okay, and I think that's you have to understand that too, behind what's going on behind the scenes, as well as Cardinal Dolan and Bishop Barron were privy to the 6 months of really kind of abuse that was going on from Dan Patrick, from Paula White, prior to even the commission started back in August. They were threatening to remove Carrie. Okay, and let's not forget. People say, "Well, did Trump know about this?" I mean, they were close. Carrie and him are close. Did he know what was going on? He most certainly did. Because as Carrie said, Trump came up to Carrie at the September 8th hearing. I was actually in the room when in that same room, and looked at Carrie and said, "I know what they're doing to you. Don't worry. I've taken care of it. They're not going to remove you from the commission." Okay. So this goes back to September, and Carrie was having interchanges with Cardinal Dolan and Bishop Barron, who also in their own way said, if they're going to kick you off for talking about Gaza, they're going to kick me off too as well. So it's dishonest, right? To just for Bishop to say this is just browbeating, you were out of control, blah 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 blah, right? Here's a little piece of private or information. We haven't really talked about this on any other show yet, Zach. Carrie and I met with a certain bishop. I won't give his name out in the past, about 2.5 weeks ago. Okay, specifically about this. First of all, we began this conversation. I thanked His Excellency. Thank you for actually meeting with her. Okay, and trying to hear the other side. But as we were going into it, we were really in shock because he used the word, this came across as a diatribe, Carrie. This is just what are you doing, right? And I looked at His Excellency's bishop. I said, do you really think that this woman is an anti-Semite? And there was just silence. And then Carrie takes out her phone. And this is you may be listening to this this is a Catholic debate. I don't really care about this. Don't miss the point. This is about religious liberty, okay? Carrie's actually defending people of all faiths in this country. Carrie takes out her phone, plays a video for Bishop to see of the Jewish rabbi that she was trying to bring to the hearing. Okay, remember, she was stopped. Who were those Jewish rabbis? They were the rabbis, and the video played out, says, Carrie Pjan is not anti-Semitic, and Zionism is wrong, and I'm paraphrasing, and we feel like second-class Jews in this country because our first allegiance is to America and not to Israel first. She wanted that, right? So she plays that video for the bishop, puts the phone down, and looks at Bishop and says, why are my own Jewish rabbis defending me, but my spiritual fathers are not? And she loses it. She starts crying, okay? And she's dead on right with that. That's why this is such a disgrace, and I think that you'll probably mention this at some point here in the show, us Catholics, we're all getting ready for Christians in general for Palm Sunday, okay? Palm Sunday coming up, big holy day. We're all going to go to Mass, palms, process to commemorate our Lord's entrance into Jerusalem before he died. Well, what are we going to hear in theory from the pulpits on 15,000 parishes across the United States? What did the Bishops' Conference send out in a private letter, which was leaked about a week and a half ago? Here it is. Title from Bishop Bombera, who's the Committee on Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs. Okay. I'll summarize it really quick. Catholic preaching on Jews and Jerusalem and Judaism during Holy Week and Easter. During the first, here we go, they name her. During the first hearing of the White House Religious Liberty Commission held a few weeks ago, Carrie Pjan Bowler, this goes out to 300 bishops, okay, across the United States. A recent convert to Catholicism sparked a widespread controversy when she disputed that blaming Jews for Jesus' death is anti-Semitic, defended public figures accused of promoting anti-Semitic conspiracy theories like Zach Costello. No, they didn't mention your name. I'm sorry. Declared that Catholics do not embrace Zionism and repeatedly pressed Jewish witnesses on Israel's actions in Gaza, which is funny, by the way, because at one point, Bishop said, why did you bring up Israel in the hearing, in our private conversation? And Carrie's like, I bring up Israel? They mentioned it 17 times. Of course, I'm going to talk about Israel. There was silence on the other end of the line. This letter goes on. There were witnesses at the hearing who rebutted Pjan Bowler's assertion about Catholic teaching, but it was her claims and not the rebuttal that have circulated in the media. In light of this public debate, our clergy prepare for the liturgy of the Palm Sunday of Sacred Triduum, blah, blah, blah. On behalf of the Commission on Ecumenical Affairs, I would encourage you all to invite the priest of your diocese to be attentive in the upcoming homilies on the preaching on Palm Sunday to talk about these points. And they give talking points. So they want their priests to basically go after Carrie and condemn her. That's like libel, okay? Honestly. And it's really this. That hurts me. I see this woman who just tries to make an effort. Maybe she could be more precise in her language, but give me a break. Give me a break.
That came from the USCCB.
Yes, that came from them. It was leaked about 2.5 weeks ago, and in the conversation I had with this bishop, he confirmed its existence. So that's completely real. Okay,
and it's going to all the dioceses throughout the country.
Already sent. Every diocese has that, and it's up to them if they want to diffuse it to their individual priest. Now, to that priest's credit or that bishop's credit, I talked to just to kind of paint him a fair picture. He did say, "Well, after per review, I'm going to send this letter out, but I'm going to say that I don't believe that personally that Carrie is anti-Semitic." I mean, thank you so much, but that's not the point. I mean, she was actually saying Catholic teaching. How about thank her? How about thank her for being someone who's now has security, right, at her death threats, whatever she got, right? It's shocking.
It is shocking. But the damage will be done because it's going to go out to enough dioceses and enough parishes throughout the country to have an effect on what the truth is. Like, it's, oh my gosh, like it's the same. Oh, I don't want to get too far into the weeds of this, but it's the same concern and infiltration that we see from the Zionist lobby on evangelical churches throughout America. Like, it's the same problem that's occurring within the Catholic Church, and it's coming from our own bishops, which is infuriating. It is legitimately infuriating because it's not the truth.
It's right. It's what Christ said, the whatever, the thorns are going to grow up alongside the good plants, right? They're mixed in. It's always been going to be like that. It's a war right now for America. It's a war because the bloody war happening over there is being fought right now in our churches, in our public online debates, which makes that war possible. There's hope. If you're a priest listening to this, or you're a pastor or whatever, have the courage to speak up. There was a Father Joe DiMarzio put out a great statement in support of Carrie. He was at our event, Catholic Prayer for America, last week. It's gone viral. Okay. So we just got to push back, it's disgraceful. Some people are doing bishops, but we push back, we win.
Yeah, totally agree, John. Well, John, thank you for coming on the show today. As I discussed with you, and as I told everybody on my show earlier, I mean, I could sit here and talk to you for, I feel like, hours.
We should do this more often, man.
Absolutely. You'll start to become a regular on here. I appreciate your perspective on all these things. Thanks for filling us in with regard to the fact that Catholics for Catholics is not just a foreign linked psyop, as Kash Patel's
breaking
girlfriend.
News. I know, exactly. And I was actually thinking about not doing any more prayer events after getting accused by the FBI's girlfriend for all this stuff, but there's hope. We are going to continue to pray and have prayer events no matter who comes after us, because if we pray, we win.
Well, it's funny because you and I were talking about having this conversation, and I think that came out afterwards, and you're like, well, in case we didn't have anything to talk about, now we do. So,
totally, 100%.
Good stuff.
Absolutely. But, good.
But anyway, John, thanks for joining me today, and I'll have you back on here soon. But thanks.
Enjoy your Palm Sunday service, Zach.
I will, and you as well. Thanks, John. All right, guys. Good stuff. I love talking to John. Like I said, that event that he put on was awesome. A lot of great highlights from it. I covered a lot of the recap of that in the members only show. So if you guys do become members and you want to go check that out, then go ahead. I get into some of the weeds and I go into some of the details about the different things that happen, which leads us to a couple member shout outs here. Alina Waters and Regina the Godmother. So thank you guys for becoming members, because you just did. You can go and check out that show. All right, and then let's get to some of the super chats that we have in here, and then we're going to get to some of the super chats from yesterday's show with Andrew Wilson, and we'll go through somewhat of a recap as far as all those super chats go, and I'll kind of reflect and summarize on some things that I learned from yesterday and some things that I kind of left frustrated with and have been kind of thinking about over the last 24 hours or so. Super chat here. Thank you. Erica's behavior is incongruent with shock and grief. What detective wouldn't see a red flag in a spouse who behaved this way and investigate? It's an interesting observation. I mean, here's what it comes down to. You guys know that I have been outspoken about, it's not necessarily like, yes, it is Erica Kirk's behavior and some of her decisions since she has kind of stepped into the limelight here. And as I said to you guys, like, I was initially a supporter of Erica Kirk and Turning Point USA. I felt for her. I was rooting for her. I tuned into all of her earlier stuff. I covered it here on my channel, and I wanted what was best for Erica and Turning Point USA. I really did. I really did. I can say that with 100% with my full chest. It wasn't until the lies that started to come out and a lot of the performative behavior, attention-seeking behavior, that really started to turn me off a little bit. And then, and then you have Turning Point USA and the Charlie Kirk show coming out with things and trying to give perspectives on things that Charlie didn't believe in to push a certain agenda with regard to this Trump administration or the war in Iran or like Thomas Massey and getting community noted and getting caught, not being truthful about what Charlie believed. We have examples of her not coming out and burning the bridges, for example, of those Zionist donors that made Charlie's life a living hell in the last months of his life. Like, it's kind of just continued with kind of Christian Zionist business as usual at Turning Point USA. And now they're apparently, pushing, neocon political candidates that aren't popular amongst America's youth. They don't have their finger on the pulse of America's youth like Charlie Kirk did. Erica is not going around and having conversations with America's youth. She's not doing that. I don't think she's qualified to be the CEO of Turning Point USA. That's my opinion on that. And I think that some of her behavior in the immediate aftermath, looking back on it, like the filming herself over the casket, and again, some of the attention-seeking things that she did early on are questionable. And I think that they're weird, and I don't like it. And I'm allowed to have that opinion. Two things can be true at once. Like, you can feel bad for somebody for what happened to them as far as being a widow goes, but if that said widow starts to behave in strange and weird and suspicious ways, and she starts to lie and be dishonest about things, then, what are you supposed to do? Like, are you not supposed to call that out? Are you not supposed to call out somebody's lies and dishonesty because something terrible happened to them in their past? Like, when does it become okay to lie about something after you've lost someone? Because I feel like if you lost someone, you don't lose sight of what reality is and what the truth is. If you do lose sight of reality, that is a mental illness, and that's something that you need to get fixed within your brain. So, yeah, there's obviously some things. There are some irregularities that should be investigated in order for us to find evidence. And if there's no evidence, fine. If there truly turns out to be no evidence after a thorough investigation into an irregularity, good. Debunk it. Please do. Like, this is the whole point of a lot of the questions that we're raising here. And then we've got another member here as well. All right. So let me pull up, let me get this off the screen, and then I'm going to pull up the super chats from yesterday. All right. So we got to get through this, and it's a pretty thorough list here, but let's do it. So we've got members that joined yesterday. I want to shout out all of you guys that joined through a membership yesterday. All right, and then we got a channel regular here. We've got Bulletproof Garage saying the caliber of gun claimed does not fit the wound. So again, I know that a lot of people have questions and concerns about the 30-06 being the gun that was used in the assassination, because a 30-06 typically leaves a very large exit wound because it's a very powerful weapon. And this is just, I'm not a gun expert. I have shot guns before. I own a handgun legally. However, I am not an expert with regard to, what the damage that a 30-06 can do to a human being or to an animal. There have been many people that have come out and they have obviously given their takes on this. This was an issue early on that I was obviously paying attention to. And here's where I'm at, guys. And as I told Andrew Wilson yesterday with regard to this 30-06, because I know there are a number of individuals who are kind of hinging their entire perspective on this investigation, on the fact that the 30-06 could not have been used because of its power and the fact that there was no exit wound. So people are saying that because of that, then everything else is untrue with regard to Tyler Robinson. And I definitely understand that perspective, but I am not going to hinge my entire perspective or my take on this investigation on that specific fact. And the reason for that is because I have asked many people, and I have received many messages from all of you guys, from my subscribers. And I'll tell you, some people, they send emails like, oh, I hunt with this gun. I've seen what this gun can do. No chance it didn't have an exit wound. And then I'll receive others that say, hey, like I actually use a 30-06 when I hunt, and this kind of weird, strange thing happened, and there was no exit wound. I have a very close friend who is a former Green Beret who I trust. I trust him. He has no skin in the game when it comes to all this stuff. If I need to go someone to tell me the truth, he has no problem saying it. He has no problem pissing anybody off. He's a great guy. He's a great guy. Tough guy. Been on multiple tours, tough guy. Special ops missions in some bad places, and he knows what these types of guns can do to the human body. And he has said, he told me, he was like, dude, it's probably very unlikely it didn't have an exit wound, but it's certainly possible. I've seen it before. So does that mean that I agree then with everything that the government is telling us? Absolutely not. But what I'm saying is that, again, like, just as I'm skeptical of the mainstream lone wolf narrative, I'm also skeptical of individuals that come out and say, just because of this single issue with regard to the 30-06, that then the entire case around Tyler Robinson taking the shot is completely blown up. I think it's a data point. It's a data point to take into consideration, but it's not something that I would say, like, we need to know more. We need to know more. It's a part of it, but we need to know more. So the claim here is the caliber of gun claimed does not fit the wound. Yeah, so this kind of leads in here to my, you know what, we got to get through these. Let's continue to move on. And I'm sure that I will address my concern with not your statement or not that comment there, but just kind of this issue overall when it comes to making a claim about a certain particular thing that happened with regard to it being connected to evidence and how we would actually know. And then that will kind of give you guys some insight into kind of how the debate or the conversation with Andrew Wilson played out yesterday. This next one also too is about the gun from Bulletproof Garage, same person. So also they claim the gun was disassembled on the roof and then found assembled. He had no prior gun experience, yet killed him in one shot, not feasible. So they claim the gun was disassembled on the roof. So from what I understand, the disassembly never happened on the roof. That was inaccurate information. And again, but and I can understand how you might be confused by that, because Governor Cox, if you go back and listen to his press conference in the immediate aftermath of when they were looking for the suspect, he said all sorts of things that were false. He was saying things that were untrue, like the disassembled gun on the roof. He assembled the gun on the roof, but he did not disassemble it before he jumped off. And then they found it assembled. But Governor Cox was wrong when he said that he had disassembled that gun on the roof. So they came out and then clarified that that was inaccurate. But again, the inaccuracies from the governor, who's, especially one of the guys in charge of this entire thing, came out and said something completely false. So it's funny because, Andrew Wilson was saying to me yesterday, well, the state says all of this stuff, like the state has all of this evidence. And one of my pushbacks to him was, well, the state gets stuff wrong. Investigative authorities get stuff wrong all the time. And that's a great example of them getting something wrong and being incompetent. So the claim that Tyler Robinson had no prior gun experience, yet killed him in one shot, not feasible. So again, if you go back and look at Tyler Robinson's Facebook and his experience with his dad and his family, Tyler Robinson did have a lot of gun shooting experience. Yeah, I think that that's just true. I think that it's true that he did have gun shooting experience. So, Bulletproof Garage, I'd ask you to maybe go back and double check that. Go back and double check that question there. Intuition Jen, just being a beast and gifting memberships yesterday. Really appreciate you for doing that. Andrew, how about you debate Candace? I bet you won't. I think he's reached out to Candace to try and debate, and she is not interested in doing so. That Bulletproof Guy said, and they found 5 different DNA on the rifle. That is true. That came out from the defense team, that they did find 5 different DNA on the rifle. And that is a question, again, that we'll be paying attention to when it comes to this hearing. But yes, that is a good point, and they did find that. They did that. That is according to the defense, that they found 5 different DNA on the rifle when they recovered it. Steph B. Like, thank you for the super chat. You say it looks like you got 2 comments here. Doubts from the bullet, the disruptions, the strange actions of the security and entourage. Yes. So again, what I would say to you guys is there are absolutely irregularities that occurred. And these irregularities we have been talking about and we have been questioning now for months and months and months. One of my kind of frustrations would be is that every time I would bring up a point, and guys, I want you to know, like, I know and I'm aware of a lot of these points and all of these points that you're making here. I was selective, I guess you can say, in the ones that I did decide to bring up, almost in expectation of Andrew being like, you got to show me the evidence. Like, show me the evidence specifically of this, because all of these claims that you guys make, all of these claims that all of us make, I mean, I guess it's fairly easy to go and, I guess you can say, debunk every single one of them if you demand the proof and the evidence that the claim is 100% true. So, for example, your point here with regard to the strange actions of the security and entourage, I would bring that up. I would bring up that irregularity, and then the answer back to me would be like, well, prove that had anything to do with the assassination. Prove that they were connected to Tyler Robinson. Show me the evidence that they were connected to Tyler Robinson. And none of us can do that. None of us have, because none of us have that evidence. None of us have that proof. So what we are doing, and one of the things that I should have been more clear about with Andrew, is that what we are demanding here is we're pointing out the irregularities that we are trying to then expose and then put pressure on and push the investigative authorities who have the investigative power to go about to find the evidence that there was potentially a connection. And in a fair world, they would take the evidence, they would go and investigate thoroughly, and they would either find or not find the truth about that specific irregularity. But this is why I was frustrated overall with just the overall debate format, I guess, because we got so held up on semantics and kind of technicalities of like a debate, you would say, that we weren't really able to flush out any of kind of the higher arching big picture points that are being made with regard to these irregularities. But ultimately, I think it can be summed up to, we are exposing different irregularities regarding the Charlie Kirk assassination and applying pressure and pushing the investigative authorities to thoroughly look into the irregularities so that we can be sure that the truth is known about what happened to Charlie Kirk. I think that's a good spot for us to, that's firm ground, I guess you can say, for us to be in. And the reason for that is because, again, like, we don't have, it was in a debate setting like it was yesterday. If I make a claim, it's easy for Andrew to say that my claim is wrong or just say that I'm stupid for believing it because I don't have evidence to back up the claim. But ultimately, the claim that I'm making is there are irregularities that should be investigated so that we can find evidence, right? So the demand for evidence, I feel like, is not fair, and that's not ultimately what we're calling for. I mean, we're calling for evidence, but we're calling for the investigative authorities to go about investigating so that it produces the evidence, because our concern is that these irregularities are not being investigated, or they are being investigated, and then the evidence that they are finding, which might link these things that we're talking about, are then not disclosed to us or are hidden from us in the form of that they're classified, and they're doing that for our own good to try to protect us. So that would be a concern that many of us have. But next one would be Intuition Jen. Amazing how this troll Andrew will not debate. He's gaslighting, attempting to debate semantics instead of the issue. This is straight out of the elite playbook. Shaking my head. And then, yeah, and Jen, that's, I think, some of the frustration that I had with the conversation from yesterday is that I think that it was, as I said on X today in kind of my summary post, is that it was a slog about different semantics and, you know, definitions of terms. But while frustrating, I think that it did do a good job in helping me to clarify and to be sharper with regard to some of the language that I use. Like there was one point where I said the word verify, where I should have said validated. What Joe Kent came out and said validated. I think a lot of our concerns didn't verify our concerns. But there are different things like that going back and learning from it that I think are very helpful. So I think it was fruitful. I think it was valuable. And, you know, again, it's a start of a conversation here. You know, it was a tough conversation. I knew what I was getting myself into with Andrew Wilson. I've seen his stuff before. I know how he can be. So I knew what I was getting myself into, and it was a tough conversation, and I'm glad that it was. You know, I think the pursuit of truth involves tough conversations. I don't think shying away from tough conversations is the pursuit of truth. So I'm glad that we did it, and I'm glad that we had the conversation. So he gave up his career for no evidence. Yeah, Bulletproof Couch, thanks for the comment. The context of that, I might have just forgotten. Go Max, Zach, Baron, Ian, Coach, Colin, Candace, we love you. We are not listening to a word from this rude, overbearing, condescending old bear. Yeah, thanks. I mean, I appreciate the encouragement there, and I know a good amount of those other guys. I've been able to connect with Baron Coleman. We follow each other now. I watch his show more often. Coach Colin, he and I have, you know, we follow each other on X, and I've left super chats now on both of their shows, just, you know, kind of chiming in. So we're kind of connecting there. Have not been able to connect, obviously, with Ian Carroll, although he likes a good amount of my posts, and he's reshared some things, and same with Candace. And I'm looking forward to hopefully potentially building a relationship with them. But as it relates to Andrew, like, look, I mean, I know his style. I know what I was getting myself into. You know, he comes off as brash, and I get that, and I understand that. He's kind of been he's in the debate world all the time. He debates a lot of people, and, you know, maybe that has hardened him over time, for sure. But I didn't take any issue with the things that he said or how he treated me yesterday. You know, some people have, you know, say they use a lot of curse words. That's just how they are. That's just kind of their style, and that's just how he is. So I knew what I was getting myself into. I've seen his stuff before, so I didn't take anything personally. I think that's all good. All right, I got to get through these, and I got to probably take less time in between answering each one. So thank you, Zach. God bless and keep going. Thank you for the support of the channel and the super chat. Trump's Truth Social tweet is the best evidence that POTUS had foreknowledge. Wording extremely sus. Re Charlie Kirk. No longer here. He said no longer here before confirmation came that Charlie died. I'm not aware of that. Are we sure that Trump just didn't have kind of access to that information first? That would be my only question there. Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but I can go and look into that, and I can double check that. Zach, go Max. You know what is out there. You got this. Yeah, thank you. Again, there's a lot of things that I've been paying attention to, and there are a lot of different perspectives and theories that I had heard regarding the Charlie Kirk investigation. But I told you guys I was selective in what I decided to bring up because, again, I knew what I was getting myself into, and I knew what some of the arguments were going to be with regard to lack of evidence as far as some of these irregularities go. So, Zach, don't let him gaslight you. His opinions are not facts. The claims of the investigation have been easily debunked by the public. Yeah, you know, one of the things I thought of is I very easily could have just turned it around back on him. Like, one of the arguments, for example, is that the text messages from Tyler Robinson that the FBI gave to us are fake. The text messages are fake. And Andrew's response would be, show me the evidence that those are fake. And I don't have access to Tyler Robinson's phone or the chats or Lance Twiggs or anything like that. I mean, I don't have the evidence that proves that those messages are fake. But I could then turn that around and ask him the same. Show me the evidence that these are real. Show me the evidence that the text messages are real. And he would be in the same spot that he is putting me in. So his argument would be, well, the state says that they're real. And and my argument would be like, well, I think the state's stupid and incompetent and I don't trust them. And then we're just at a point to where we're just talking about each other's opinion, right? Like we each have an opinion on the matter, and neither of us have the evidence to back it up. His evidence is that the state says it's true, and I am skeptical of that claim, right? So you can kind of see how this works both ways, and I think that was kind of a frustrating aspect of the conversation yesterday, because again, I very easily could have done the same thing with regard to some of the things that he was saying. And he just seems to believe what the state tells us about what's going on with regard to Tyler Robinson. So anyway, Zach just realized how unserious this guy is. Maybe Kent has proof, but they won't investigate. Again, I thought bringing up Joe Kent was something that really validated our side, because what it validates is the lack of evidence being produced, or I guess you can say being taken seriously with regard to the irregularities that have been found. So the fact that the former director of national counterterrorism, who certainly has access to all this, whose job it is to analyze and gather all of the data and information regarding acts of terrorism, foreign and domestic, the fact that he believes that not all leads were pursued and therefore not all evidence has been produced, that's concerning. And that validates the skepticism that a lot of us have regarding the Charlie Kirk case. Now, you can either say that Joe Kent is a liar. You can say Joe Kent's a liar and that evidence doesn't exist, or that evidence is irrelevant, as Kash Patel apparently believes that it is. But just say you say Joe Kent's a liar. Okay, so show me the proof. Show me the evidence that Joe Kent is a liar. You can't show me the evidence that Joe Kent's a liar. So I'm taking the director of national counterterrorism, who just resigned at his job, stepped down from a position of power out of conscience, just like I talked with John Yep about, at his word. I'm taking him at his word that he believes that there's more evidence, there's more leads and tips to look into to discover more evidence regarding the Charlie Kirk assassination case. And Kash Patel disagrees. So you can just see the fundamental disagreement here. Kash Patel thinks it's a slam dunk case, and they got Tyler Robinson. No need to look any further. The director of the National Counterterrorism Center disagrees. So here we are. We're just at a disagreement. We're at a disagreement. And I mean, it validates the concerns that many of us have. So I think that's a good, Joe Kent is a very good source, I guess you can say, for the side that is more skeptical of the lone wolf narrative. And as I said, you guys just saw the clip. Like Joe Kent, he believes Tyler Robinson may have done it, but he wants to know if the case is bigger than just Tyler Robinson. And guys, that's very close to where I'm at. And I understand that I'm also open-minded to the alternative theory that Tyler Robinson didn't take the shot and that it involved more of an operation. I'm not discounting that. I'm not closing off my mind to that. I am remaining open-minded with regard to this Charlie Kirk investigation because I want to know the truth. And what I'm not going to do is turn around and finger point at somebody else who comes up with a theory or has a perspective on this that might be different or might be an alternative theory. I want to know what it is. I want to know what it is because I want every stone uncovered. I want to know the full truth. I want to know the full truth about what happened to Charlie Kirk. So I'm willing to remain open-minded and hear the different arguments without slandering that person, without diagnosing that person, without calling that person, without saying that person has no right to ever affiliate themselves with me or doesn't have a right to have a platform. I am not going to do that. I don't think that's the right thing to do. And that is what honestly drives me the most insane about all of this, because that's how they've treated Candace Owens since day one. And as I've told you guys, I was skeptical of what Candace Owens was talking about at the very beginning. But then I saw how she was being treated, how she was being diagnosed and slandered and just blatantly lied about. And I was like, well, she's saying true things. So why are they lying about her? And that was an eye-opening moment for me. So I've been paying attention to what she has had to say ever since. And then you see him come out with say like, oh, if you pay attention or take Candace Owens seriously, you're not a Christian. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like, what are you talking about? It like that kind of stuff, guys. It literally just drives me insane. It's like you can't sit in a seat of discernment and listen to an argument that someone has and not make your own decisions from it. Like, yeah, Candace has personality. Yeah, she goes after people hard. You know, she's talked about certain things as a part of the investigation, which I think, you know, aren't. And when I say aren't relevant, I mean like she's brought up opinions or she's speculated about certain things, like the hatch that was underneath Charlie, for example. I'm using that as just one example of something that potentially could have happened, and then they'll go and they'll use that against her as, you know, oh my gosh, like she said this, like, and use it to discredit her. And it's just like, that is not fair. Like, what are you doing? That's not fair. So, anyway, I said that I was going to take less time in between these, and obviously I just talk way too much. So, all right, we got a new member there. Shout out to you, Scott. How about the behavior of Mikey at the second that Charlie was killed? Yeah. And how Charlie Kirk was handled from the jump and lack of blood. You got all these points. I can say that Mikey McCoy did not act as a hero. I can say they lied about it. I can say that Mikey McCoy put his fingers over his ears and walked away from the scene and didn't look at Charlie. And I can have an opinion on that behavior and how I don't think that it's bravery and I don't think he acted like a hero. But then again, guys, the argument was just going to be, and this was the format and the context of the debate yesterday, which is like, what is the evidence that Mikey McCoy was involved in the assassination of Charlie Kirk? Like you understand kind of, you know, the situation that I was in yesterday. I feel like I'm now talking about it till I'm blue in the face, but that's the reality of what the conversation and how it was yesterday. And again, it's an irregularity. It's a data point. It's a potential lead. with regard to Mikey McCoy's reaction. But like, look. If Mikey were just to have come out and said, like, I was in shock, I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I saw Charlie get hit, and I don't know. That was my reaction. I wish that I had acted differently. I. But to come out and like say that you acted like a hero, or to have your dad come out and say you act like a hero and you were covered in blood. That's the problem. That's the problem. And then it causes people to be like, well, why are you lying about this? That's not how you acted. Right? So, man, if you don't want people to look into you, if you don't want questions being asked, like, just tell the truth. Just be truthful. Just be authentic. I think that's what a lot of us are looking for and what a lot of us are asking for. Yeah, I mean, another comment there. This guy's arrogant, trying to manipulate you with psychological games. I don't know if it was that necessarily. I think that what it was, he just is skilled and very knowledgeable of debate and the technicalities of debate. And I think that, again, and kind of the language used and the semantics being used, he's kind of trained in it, and I'm not. I would say that I'm more of a discussionist, more of a discusser of ideas, talking about the different ideas. I'm not polished in debate. I'm not. I don't, didn't take debate in high school. I'm willing to have open conversations about the different ideas. And I think that's a good thing. And I don't think necessarily, if you're just trying to discern what the truth is and get at the truth and talk about different facts and different circumstances and irregularities, I don't think you have to be formally trained in debate. In fact, I'm happy to not be, to be honest with you, because it allows me to look at things from a different perspective and maybe hear things from a different perspective from people when they talk about them. So the DOJ should investigate him. That's what your argument is. All of your points are proving your position. He's using psychology to twist the argument. Yeah, I commented on that already a little bit. Thanks for the comment. Thanks for the super chat. We see you, Zach. I bet Erica paid Andrew with a pallet of cigarettes. I can't prove my claim, though. There you go. You cannot. You have no evidence for that. You do not have any evidence for that. That is your claim and that is your opinion. And I can determine whether or not I think your claim and your opinion is wrong or right. We have to take our country back. Trump let us down. I agree. And we got to figure out how best to do that. I like what Joe Kent said, is we got to demand accountability from our political leaders, and we need to elect political leaders that actually do have our best interest in mind. That's a challenge, though, for us, for sure. The prosecution needs reasonable doubt. Yep, that's true. Reasonable doubt. Sorry, Zach, I can't listen to this guy. I saw a few of those yesterday. Look, yeah, guys, like I said, I knew what we were getting into there, and it is what it is. I know Andrew's style. I know he's brash. I know he's rough around the edges, and he's going to come at you. So we just gotta deal with it. Like I said, we can do hard things here on this show. All right. I know there's a few more here. We're going to have to pause. We're going to have to punt this to another day. We got about halfway through. Again, there were a lot of super chats from yesterday, but we will get to them. I'm not going to leave you guys hanging there. So tomorrow, okay, here's what I can say. Tomorrow, I have an announcement for you guys. I'm going to be on Gary Melton and Paramount Tactical. He invited me on. We've talked a couple times about me joining his show so he can grill me and ask me some of these questions about these things, and I'm going. So I'm going to go on Paramount Tactical tomorrow, and we're going to go through the Andrew Wilson show that I just did yesterday, and we're going to go through some of the points, and we'll see where it goes. Like I said, if somebody has proven to have built a competent platform, and I feel as though it's in pursuit of the truth and we can have a discussion about ideas, like, I'm going to take that challenge. if the person has built up a platform and has proven themselves to be competent in this space, and they come at me or they challenge me, I'm inclined to take that on. I'm excited to do so. So I'm going to go on with Gary tomorrow, and we're going to talk about some of these things. In addition, Gary is someone that I was paying attention to early on in the Charlie Kirk investigation. I appreciated some of his early work. I don't appreciate how he's, again, kind of just turned against Candace to slander, diagnose her. But, it is what it is. We'll talk about some of these things tomorrow. So we are going to do that. So I will be on Gary Melton tomorrow. And what I will do is I'll try to get on here live, maybe earlier in the morning. We can go through some of these other, we can go through the rest of these super chats here from the Andrew Wilson podcast. And then maybe you guys can comment on, and we can talk about what's about to happen on Paramount Tactical. And then maybe you guys can join over there. Or maybe I can simultaneously stream it. I'm not sure how that works, but we'll go from there. Last super chat here from Anna. You are an outstanding podcaster, and man, you are nothing like Andrew. He has no proof that anything the state says is real. I appreciate your compliments. And like I said, I very easily could have turned around and had him say and told him, like, provide me the evidence that the state is not lying to us. Right? His claim is that the state has solid evidence against Tyler Robinson. I could very easily turn around and say, show me the evidence that the state is telling us the truth. Right? I mean, you can very easily make that claim, or show me the evidence that the text messages are true, or show me the evidence that the gun was actually the gun that was used, or show me the evidence that it was the 30-06. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these are all the different things that you can then turn around. And the thing is, the evidence that he is relying on is just coming from what the state is telling him. And I think at this point, we all have reason to doubt what the state and the investigative authorities are telling us. But all right, guys, that's going to be all for today. Thank you all for joining me. If you guys do have a chance, please like and subscribe via the video. The YouTube algorithm likes that. And I will see you all tomorrow. I'm Zach Costello.